Hey y'all, hey. Welcome back to another edition of Brit Eats. How have y'all been? How are y'all doing? Let me turn this music down, hold on. I hope the week has been treating you well. Perfect. I hope the week has been treating you well. I hope you are feeling good and staying warm and safe in this cold season. Is it officially winter? No, I don't think it's even winter yet. End of December, right? Either way, it's way too cold for my taste. Oh, nope, not all the way. There we go. Yes, hello. So before I get into talking about our main topic today, which is leaving toxic relationships, I want to say thank y'all so much for 50 subs. I think it's like 53 or something now, but thank y'all so much. It means the world to me. To be honest, I didn't think I'd hit 50 subs in this time frame, especially considering, oh, hey, Jayla, hey! Thanks for coming in. Good to see you, or good to have you here. Yeah, no, I just didn't think I'd hit 50 in this time frame, especially with how sporadic my posting was at one point. So thank y'all so much. It really means a lot. I really appreciate it, and it feels good to know that other people are interested in this type of content. So to celebrate this as our like halfway mark to our 100 sub goal, I wanted to have a snack mukbang. These are some of the snacks that kind of help get me through my times when I'm just super low energy, don't really have it in me to like do a whole meal or things like that. I'll have like a couple pretzels, make myself a snack wrap. I've actually mentioned this before, both on Instagram and through a video, the tips for surviving depression video. That snack wraps are just such a staple for me at this point. I used to love them when McDonald's had them, and oh, you're so sweet. Thank you, thank you. I really hope it is good content. I'm trying my best to do good things with it. But yeah, snack wraps staple of my my diet when I am feeling just super low energy or in depressive periods for a really long time. Super filling, and personally I think I make them better than McDonald's made them, but I get to zhuzh it up and add the little things that they didn't have before, so it's nice. I also have some jerky. I am personally a fan of jerky. I love the teriyaki flavored kinds, but that's my thing. The only thing for me is it can be pretty expensive, so when I no longer have stamps, it's gonna be a sad day, but jerky gets me through. Fruit snacks, I get the Mott's kind. I'm not completely, married to that kind, but it's one of the better kinds to me anyway. I really used to love the Scooby-Doo ones until they changed the formula. I feel like if you know, you know, but they were so good before, and now it's not what it used to be. But I will bash like 4 bags of these fruit snacks in one sitting. Yeah, I think they should make a share size bag that I can still just eat by myself, but that's just me. Some veggie sticks. I am always the person to eat the veggie sticks whenever me and a few people get wings. Other people, especially the celery, like I feel like celery gets a bad rap. I don't think celery's that bad. I think it's super crucial in especially, soups and stews and whatnot. I think people need to give celery a little bit more of a chance. The only thing I ever hear is, oh, it tastes like green water. Maybe you need some green water in your life. Maybe you need a little bit more moisture in the form of veggie. That's all I'm saying. Give it another shot. Have it with, a certain dip or whatever. You see, I got my ranch on deck. Have it with a green goddess dip. Perfect thing to do, hands down. I should have had it today. I don't have it. I will have it next time. What else? Yeah, I think I've already mentioned the pretzel. I freaking love this particular kind of pretzel. I feel like it's the only pretzel I ever find in the freezer section. And I think I mentioned before, Auntie Anne's, if you ever decide to go into the frozen pretzel business, you already have a customer in me. Just saying. I also have some cotton candy here. I'm not really, sold to a particular brand for cotton candy either. I just always pick up what's at my local dollar store. So shout out to the dollar stores out there whose prices are still $1, not $1.25. If you know, you know. Yeah, but I hope you have your snacks too. I hope you were able to gather some up to be able to enjoy them with me. The smoothie. How could I forget the smoothie? So smoothies are another thing that, especially for like breakfast time, I have a really hard time making myself breakfast a lot of days. And so when I can, or usually lately it's been my partner that makes them for me because my partner is amazing. But I will have a smoothie to try to just either make sure I have something or to jumpstart my appetite whenever I'm having those times where I just cannot get any sense of appetite at all. Yeah. Well, let me take a look at the chat. Celery's a necessary evil for soup, but that's it. Have you ever made your own jerky? No, I've never made my own jerky, but I want to. But all this celery slander. It is green water. It's only good cooked. So, okay. don't get me wrong. I am not with the celery water thing. That was not ever something that I feel like should have been a thing. I could still see them in a smoothie though. Like if you're going for a green smoothie type of deal, give it a try. Strictly celery, no. But honestly, I feel like there's a lot of veggies that I just wouldn't straight up drink on their own. But celery certainly wouldn't be at the top of the list either. I'll be honest. I used to just scoop it with peanut butter. I mean, see, and that's not bad. You know, the whole, what is it? The ants on a log thing. That's not bad. And I'll admit, it took me a second to come around with celery too. But you know what? Let it be great, okay? Let celery be great outside of soups and dishes, okay? Let it be great on its own as your, your veggie of the day with a couple dips. Yeah. You would just lick the peanut butter off the celery. Y'all wildin'. All right, I'ma dig in. Let's get this first crunch going with the celery to honor Jayla and Jade. Because it's good. I'm not sharing this ranch with nobody, so I could double dip. It's a nice spoon. Y'all wildin'. It is a nice spoon and veggie. But it's cool. I'm gonna let y'all live. I just feel like, especially, this is the last thing I'll say about it. Especially with some hot wings, celery, with that ranch, is gonna give you the cooling you need. That's all I'm saying. That's it. But getting into talking about leaving toxic relationships. Sorry, one second. Pulling up my journal. Leaving toxic relationships. So, when I think of something being toxic, I think of something having a continual, harmful, or negative effect on something else. And I feel like at this point in our lives, or, if you've made it to your mid-20s, like myself, at this point, you will have either, been involved in or been exposed to some type of toxicity in a situation or a relationship. So when we say, come on ASMR crunch, I'm gonna keep giving it to you too every time. I live for the crunch. Hot wings and carrots. Look, carrots and celery, but it's fine. But my work life full of toxicity. Yes, it pops up in every single space, right? And so when we say toxic relationships, what are we thinking about? Something that's abusive or destructive, something that changes people for the worse, something that separates or isolates them from others, something that strips someone of their autonomy, something that greatly benefits from you but never benefits you, something that makes you question your sense of self. And I want to go back and just kind of talk about that, those last 2 points a little bit more, especially because there is so much, especially going back to what you said, Jayla, like toxicity in the workspace. There's such an idea of, you have to sacrifice so much for this company to maybe see the fruits of your labor in the future. While the whole time, I really do enjoy veggies, y'all. But carrots are really up there for me too. But the whole time, they benefit from you greatly. They exploit you and under-benefit you and undercompensate you and take up way too much of your time, even outside of what your work hours are supposed to be, especially depending on what kind of career you're in. And that these spaces expect you to sacrifice so much of yourself and your time without making sure they're at the very least meeting your needs. I just think that's ridiculous. And that's not even to mention, people's attitudes in the workspace, especially when, they hold certain positions of privilege and power. There are a lot of people who situate themselves in certain positions simply so that they can, lord that power over other people and make themselves feel better. Or so they could try to, going back to the point of greatly benefiting from you without ever benefiting you, they'll just kind of shove all of their work off onto you, or as much as they can. And I know so many of us have been in a situation where you're the new person in the workspace. And so, everybody will, well, not everybody, but some people will come around and try to see, how far they could test you or how much they can push you to do what they want you to do. It's just toxic. This can also apply to a lot of other things and a lot of other relationships: familial, platonic, romantic, and acquaintanceship, relationships with certain substances, and relationships with yourself. I think just as much as anything has the capacity to be good, anything has the capacity to be toxic. And obviously that's not to say that things can't move forward from that. But I think you really have to take into consideration how things got there in the first place and how you can really change to move forward if you're the one being toxic, that is. Sorry, I'm gonna eat more. Also, slightly going off topic, I think I'm gonna start doing a video in between the streams, so it's not too long of a lull between when things are going on. So look out for that. I also think I'm gonna start doing some art therapy practices and methods on stream for us to be able to do together. But let me know what y'all think of that. Either in the chat or in the comment sections later for the people that come back and watch this later. But going back to the topic at hand. I think there's a lot of things that don't get discussed enough around toxicity in regards to these different things. I think one important thing to understand across the board is that one toxic relationship can impact every other aspect of your life. And usually they do. Especially depending on the type that it is. So I think the first one I want to talk about is like toxicity in familial spaces, right? And so I want to focus on the kids first, because I feel like we should, because kids are the ones that are, most often have their autonomy stripped from them and are taken advantage of. And I just feel like as a society, and across a few different societies in the world, we don't protect our youth enough. We don't believe them when they come to us, and we blame them for the things that have happened to them. And there are still people that actively, regard and conceptualize children as property. And, I think especially for Black people, that sounds very familiar and very reminiscent of oppressive things. We need to be careful of how we engage with our ideas of, children and how we treat them. Because I feel like a lot of things that are considered acceptable by some, to do to kids, it wouldn't be considered acceptable to do that to your partner or peer or another adult. And I just feel like there's still so many people who fight tooth and nail to be able to argue that, you know, it's okay to do harmful things to your kids as a means of discipline, or, you know, to set an example, or to put them on the right path, right? But I think we should be mindful of where those conceptualizations come from, what they're rooted in. And so many kids grow up in toxic households and don't get the chance to process the harm they've experienced, let alone speak up on it and heal from it. And a lot of them, you know, end up having to endure those relationships for the rest of their life because they have either, you know, felt guilted into doing so, into this sense of obligation to be around the same people that treat you terribly because you're supposed to, because family. And that alone ends up impacting the rest of their life, because then, you know, how do they view other relationships that they find themselves in? What do they imagine as acceptable treatment from the partners that they find themselves with later, the friendships that they find themselves in? And it goes hand in hand with an idea that because we've provided the basic necessities to children, that they have to surrender their autonomy. And I think the effect of this is so evident, especially in later generations. I feel like, especially because we are starting to like speak up and out about it. It is a cycle. Absolutely, it's a cycle. We're starting to speak up and out about it. And we have the space to say, you know, actually, sorry, I lost my train of thought. I'm sure it'll come back to me. But at the end of the day, oh, yes, that's what it was. We have people who can't defend themselves, who can't speak up for themselves, who can't set boundaries because they've never been given the opportunity to practice it within their own homes. You know, I view a home, that especially one that you're growing up in, as a space where you should feel comfortable enough to be vulnerable, you know, to grow and, you know, speak up and say, you know, I feel affected by this in this way. But we hear so many stories of people across different backgrounds saying that they felt afraid to speak up. And, you know, I feel like this also goes hand in hand with this idea that we need to instill fear in children in order to get them to listen or be good, when really that's just a control tactic. And it once again just is reflective of this idea that it's okay to do these things to kids that we wouldn't normally say are okay to do with other people. And for the kids that do get out, you know, grow up, reach adulthood, leave, move on and do their own things, I do want to say, you know, be very careful of when people come back around later on, or try to reach out and connect later on and say, hey, how's it going? Like, you know, just trying to get in where they could fit in kind of deal. Especially when you're, you know, in a much better position than you were when you were like having to be involved with them. Because while sometimes this can indicate that that other person is also trying to grow and change and do better, sometimes it can also indicate that someone else is seeing you doing better and they recognize that and they want it for themselves. And so they try to situate themselves around you in order to absorb whatever they can from you. And sometimes they'll be very good about playing the role And that's not to say, once again, that this is everyone that this happens with, but just be vigilant. I think it's really important to be vigilant about those kinds of things. Yeah, instilling fear, it's such a tactic. It's such a tactic, and I feel like a lot of the people that use that tactic, especially parentally, don't understand that they're just repeating those same cycles. Exactly like Jay said, it's a cycle. They're repeating the same cycles that were used against them. Regardless, I do want to say, I want to take a moment to say that you have every right to set boundaries and remove yourself from a situation or a relationship if it's detrimental to your well-being. Or if you just, feel some bad vibes. You're like, you know what? I don't know if this person has the best intentions for me. You are not obligated to stay situated around somebody. Yeah, folks, do be energy vampires. Exactly that. This leads me into platonic. Because I feel like platonic toxic relationships are another one where... Actually, double back to familial. Something that I don't feel like gets addressed a lot is where parents want you to live your life the way that they want you to. Even being in college, I heard a lot of stories of kids whose parents wouldn't support them if they didn't choose, the major that they wanted them to do. And while that was something I never had to do or deal with, I was just like, wow, that's really messed up. That's very controlling. And I think something that does need to get addressed more is financial abuse. Because there are so many situations in families where the first thing that is threatened is, financial abuse. And mental and emotional abuse already don't get the platform that they should. But I feel like that's one that just kind of just slides under the radar a lot. I think the only time I really do hear them talked about more so is in situations of marriage. And that's not to say that those situations aren't bad, but I do think there needs to be more conversations around other situations where people are essentially forced to do something or face the consequences of losing the support that was already supposed to be there for them. Going back to platonic relationships, though, and energy vampires in general. Platonic relationships, like toxic or abusive platonic relationships, really sneak up on you. I've definitely had an instance where, like, I had a friend who I felt like was veering towards, more toxic or just like engaging in a lot more toxic behaviors. And as I tried to talk to her about it, she kind of ended up telling me and some other friends, like, I just feel like my definition of friendship has changed and what a friend should do has changed. And for me, in that moment, it was very like exactly one of those kind of situations. You enjoy benefiting from me, but you didn't want to benefit me, or you didn't want to be real with me. And, it begs the question, like, okay, when were you going to tell me and the rest of us that your definition of friendship has changed? There's also friendships where people get very possessive and attach themselves to someone and will go as far as to threaten other people who try to get close to that person, or won't even really threaten, but just do everything they can to try to intervene or get involved in a situation or a relationship that they don't really have any place in. Sorry, I want to make sure I'm not missing nothing. Yeah. Just like with familiar relationships, you have to be very careful with people, you know, trying to use you to get ahead. Or once again, like situate themselves around you to benefit off of what you have. Or like your peace. Because some people see you in your piece and they're like, dang, that really looks nice. And it's like, it's one thing to admire that for someone. It's another thing to put yourself in the middle of it and have no intention to like support it, but like continually reap the benefit of that. I would also say, generally, you know, be wary of people who change themselves depending on what room they're in. And who, you know, change what they claim to believe in, regarding depending on what room they're in and who they're around. I know that may sound obvious, but I only think the reminder is so necessary because when we get ourselves involved in relationships with people, sometimes we want to see the best of them so bad, or want to try to move forward so bad, that we overlook or excuse certain things that they do. And we do the same things for ourselves too, but we're going to get to the self later. But listen to your intuition, because everybody hasn't been in this kind of situation, but I wager that a lot of people have been in situations where they've been friends with someone who like constantly will make jokes at their expense, constantly belittle them, constantly just say things to embarrass them. And definitely listen to your intuition when it tells you that that's not right, that's not okay. Because once again, we'll make excuses. We'll be like, oh, that's just how they joke, or it's not a big deal, it's whatever, they're like that with everybody. But it gets to a certain point where if that's all that person is doing, are they actually your friend? Or are they one of your biggest haters in disguise? Like, we got to be honest with ourselves that sometimes other people have not worked through what they need to work through in order to build a healthy relationship. As much as we might want a healthy relationship with them, as much as we might want to like move forward and work through that with them, sometimes you cannot, going back to the support and care talk, your support is not always going to be what is needed. Your presence is not always going to be what's needed. And in fact, it could be detrimental for not only that other person, but also for you. And yeah, some people keep people around themselves because they're miserable with themselves and want to punch down on others to make them feel better about themselves. Exactly that. If somebody wants to feel better, they should focus on working on themselves, not on everything in everyone else around them. Yeah, y'all. And I feel like, you know, especially as we get older, or I hope as we get older, we start to recognize and realize these things more and more. Because it really be people out here, you know, trying to use people. And, you know, just generally toxic, still stuck in a very toxic mindset or like state of being. And some people aren't necessarily trying to move from that or want to. And sometimes you do have to accept that. Which I low-key feel like is a good transition into the romantic element of this. Mm. I feel like it's similar to platonic in a lot of ways, but with its obvious differences, especially depending on how far entwined your lives are at this point. Because, you know, people move in with a romantic partner, even have shared accounts with a romantic partner, things like that. And so we really, you know, as we think about people in toxic or, you know, abusive romantic relationships, we really have to stay mindful to just how hard that entwinement makes it to get out of those situations. And we have to remind ourselves how manipulative and calculative a lot of toxic people can be. I do think the use of image is more prevalent in these kind of situations. And by that, I mean someone else that knows that person, that abusive or toxic person, saying, oh, well, I've never experienced that from them. That's not the person I know. Because usually these people, you know, are either mutual relationships or connections in your life, or, you know, friends or family members. And so you feel that much more pressure to like stay involved, or like that much more defeated when you're trying to tell your story and like defend yourself. Which this part too is like when people do try to speak up for themselves and stick up for themselves, they are faced with a system that does not intend to help them, and that will actually punish them rather than, you know, protect them for coming forward about their abuse. So for anyone, you know, that has known someone stuck in an abusive relationship and just couldn't understand why they didn't leave, you have to understand how hard it is too. Because once again, toxic people, highly manipulative, calculative, anticipate your actions and other people's actions and use that against you. You know, I don't want to speak too much on it, but I think the case earlier this year that, you know, caught national attention regarding the murder of that woman by her boyfriend, I think that is just, and it was talked about a lot as far as this, but it was just another example as far as how when you are in a toxic or abusive relationship, you are constantly battling the perception and image of that person, as well as the person themselves, and how you are now being perceived. And so it's hard. So support your friends, because more often than not, these same people will isolate their partners from all of their other friends, their family members, even from work, even, and intentionally do this to make it that much harder for them to escape. It's another hurdle for them, and it's a large one, and it, you know, compounds so much more if you have kids, and, you know, depending on your certain identities and work status and things of that nature. I love that the younger generation picked up on this more than we did at that age. Yeah. And honestly, I think it's because we've been a lot more, you know, truthful about it. We have to admit, you know, like, we cannot act like these things have been okay. And even though, you know, in past generations, things like this have gotten swept under the rug and still do, that doesn't make it okay. And I agree. I'm glad the younger generation is speaking on more. We need them to. I ain't touched this smoothie. We need them to, though. And they should. They should be taken seriously. Because what they're saying makes sense. They don't want to be sold and fed the same lie that we were. Or that they tried to sell us. Because I do feel like a good deal of... technically I'm a millennial. But I do feel like a good deal of millennials, like later millennials especially, have been extremely vocal. And support these kids and say, yeah, keep doing your thing. Or at least I hope they do anyway. I do. That's a good smoothie. I don't touch this cotton candy neither. I lied. My favorite cotton candy is Chuck E. Cheese cotton candy. But that might be more nostalgia than anything else. But yeah. I think it's super important. Gotta keep supporting each other through just walking away from toxic situations and relationships. Bringing it back to the workplace, I see the younger generation saying, F this BS so much. And it feels so lit every time. Keep doing it. Keep doing it. Yeah, to basically end out the part regarding toxic romantic situations and relationships, we really have to focus on creating more resources and tangible means of support for people that are going through or experiencing these. And that's not to say that there can't be relationships where each party is toxic or there's toxicity. Hey, Natalie, good to see you. Thanks for coming through. That's not to say that there can't be relationships where there's toxicity on both ends. But in that, I do think that there needs to be some space for both parties to acknowledge that and to be able to work on that and be able to say, okay, you know what? I don't know if we're the best for each other, and be able to move forward from that. And that's not to say, like, you know, maybe as you grow and change, you could try to see what kind of relationship you could have in the future. Not to say that it should be romantic. It could just be platonic. It could be an acquaintanceship. But I think it's extremely important to understand in those moments when, you know, both parties are toxic, the things that you've done to each other. And for self. So I think it's also really safe to say that we've all also been the toxic party in a situation. You know, could have handled a situation better, could have approached a situation differently, or just actively harmed someone. And, you know, for me speaking my piece and, you know, being as vulnerable and honest as I can in this situation, I can own that while I was in a relationship in high school, I cheated on a boyfriend at the time with a friend's boyfriend. And there's a lot I can say about that situation, but all in all, my behavior wasn't justifiable. It just wasn't. And because of a myriad of harmful experiences that I had already lived, and my self-esteem following those experiences and the nature of those relationships at the time, I took out my own insecurities on other people. And of course I got burned in the end. But I think the most important thing that can be said in that is that, you know, I played with fire. And I had decisions that I made. And I got my consequences in that. And in that, I also need to own those decisions that I made. And remember them so that I can remember not to make them again. Or, you know, decisions like them. Sometimes it's about communication too. Absolutely. Absolutely. Because communication in and of itself can be toxic. Because there's a lot of toxic communicative methods that are used against other people as well. And so we also need to examine how we're communicating with other people and how we're even engaging in thinking about communicating with other people, because sometimes we can be really vindictive without even realizing it. And sometimes, obviously we say things when we feel strongly about something, and obviously the thing that comes after that a lot is, oh, I was just in the heat of the moment, I didn't mean what I said. But you did, though. On some level, you thought something along those lines, and in this like really intense heated moment, you said exactly what's on your mind. And so then you need to sit with that thing that you said and how the other person felt in that, and how, the aftermath of that for that other person. And taking it back to exactly what Joe said, it being about, real communication, real healthy communication between the two of you or more, however many people are involved in the situation. Yes, acknowledge that what happened and that it's over. Let people move on. People can be good to someone else and not have the same issues from previous relationships. Absolutely. Absolutely. Because I was actually reading on a thread earlier, and someone was talking about how they were, like me, a cheater in a relationship. I feel like theirs was like later on into adulthood, but they were a cheater in their relationship, and it was a moment for them to really think about what they actually wanted in their relationship and why they cheated in the first place. And they came to realize, they felt like the relationship was already doomed because them and that person wanted different things. And in that, back to communication, you have to be able to communicate that with your partner, that you've come to realize that you want different things, and so maybe you should be apart, so that you then don't take the thing that you couldn't work up the nerve to say and turn that into harm for the next person, especially someone that was supposed to be close to you. And then that person, is now able to be engaged in polyamorous relationships because they were honest with themselves, and because they were honest in that situation to say, you know what, I messed up, and I can really acknowledge why I did it, and I can also acknowledge that it wasn't okay. But now you're able to move forward in a way that, you have less of a likelihood of hurting the next person. Yeah. Trying to think if there was anything. It feels like knowing how to properly communicate, especially in conflict, is its own skill. Absolutely. It's something a lot of people don't grow up knowing how to navigate, and it leads to a lot of messes, especially in romantic relationships and self-awareness. Yes, absolutely. And that goes back to exactly what we said before. It's a cycle. And when you grow up in a household where you're not even given the real space and opportunity to talk about your feelings, to address things openly, how do you build on those things later in other relationships? You've never had the practice even in your own home. That's where so much of your, upbringing and learning is supposed to happen. But you couldn't you couldn't grow your emotional intelligence in those spaces. Hey, Abe, what's up? It's so good to have you. Wow, hello. Thank you for stopping through. I hope you're enjoying the chat. But yeah, and self-awareness as well. It folds right in hand with that. If you never get to see self-awareness practiced around you, how do you practice that for yourself? If your parents never take it upon themselves to practice self-awareness around you, and that even goes back to this toxicity, right? There's so many parents that don't apologize for their wrongdoings and just kind of make it this cyclical situation of oh, do you want to get something to eat, or oh, do you want to go out somewhere, or oh, here's this thing I bought you. There's never a real apology. There's never a real addressing of what happened. And I feel like even raising your voice at your kid, elicits such a response. Raising your voice at anybody, honestly, elicits such a response. And I feel like, particularly with kids, though, when you are their parent, you really have to take that time to say, all right, I let my emotions get the best of me with someone who is still trying to navigate and figure out theirs. Let me take the time and the opportunity to sit them down and say, hey, you know what? I blew up at you, and that wasn't right of me. That was wrong. And I can acknowledge that, and I can be aware of that, and I want you to be aware that it wasn't okay for me to do that. And I think that just speaks volumes. I think that works wonders for what can be built in a relationship between a parent and child. And that child then can go on and take that into their other relationships, in their romantic relationship, in their platonic relationships, and be able to say when they mess up or make a mistake or do something that's harmful to somebody else, hey, you know what? I recognize that what I did harmed you, and I'm sorry. And I want to be able to do something to repair this so we can move forward as in a better relationship, as better friends, as better lovers, as better people. And once again, I just think that goes so much further than just a simple, oh, my bad, or, oh, well, I didn't really mean that, or, oh, well, that's not what I meant to say. Because you said it. It's too late. It already went out your mouth. It already went into their ears. They're already internalizing what you said. So the least you can do is amend. But yes, going back to my own situation where I had my toxicity, I still look back on it. I still feel bad about it. And that's not to say, get completely wrapped up in your guilt or anything. But do be mindful of the times where you did screw up and where you made a mistake or where you were toxic, so that you can use them as reminders later on to not do those things and to remind yourself of the kind of person you don't want to be. I feel like we should remind ourselves that we certainly can be and have been the villain in someone else's story, just as much as we've been on the other side of that or could be on the other side of that. And that, a toxic self-destructive mentality and behavior towards ourselves can and does reverberate to the other corners of our lives and to other people's lives. I don't think anything really exist in a vacuum. I think we are constantly impacted by and impacting each other all the time. And how many times have you been in a situation where you're somewhere and someone comes into the room and they're in a bad mood and it just changes the entire space? And then how many situations have you been in where that exact same things happen, but someone approaches and they're like, hey, what's going on? And really tries to, communicate and see what's going on that end, with other people. In one situation, you have an outcome where, someone is very likely to, impact how other people's days, routines and existences and experiences are going. And in another situation, you have somebody who has taken it upon themselves to approach, and even though it's impacted their day, they've also taken the opportunity to impact that person's day. And not to say you should, approach every random person that's having a bad day or whatever. But I think it's just a reminder of how much we touch other people's lives and have the possibility to affect other people's lives. A simple example, but yeah. Yes, we first learn things at home, social spheres, and then it's reinforced in media too. Yes, absolutely. It's hard to break that cycle when you don't see other types of communication or conflict. Yes, absolutely. And I think that's another thing. I think because we get so used to experiencing one kind of thing, one form of conflict, one form of communication, or a limited form of communication and conflict, we start to get comfortable in that because it's what we're used to. So taking it back to people like staying in toxic relationships, toxic friendships, toxic what have you. Sometimes people don't even realize how bad it is because, well, it's all I know. And in that, I think it's super important to practice through example. Because even in my relationship today, we are constantly having to develop new forms of communicating, or at the very least, new considerations of each other, because of how we either both function or think around how certain things go. So, for example, partner asks me to do something for them. We have now gotten to a point where we will say, okay, is this something you want me to do now? Or is this something that could wait for later? Because we had instances where we would either feel like the other person wasn't listening to the other person, or wasn't taking the thing seriously, or the other person just didn't understand that the person wanted them to do it right now. And so, continuing to practice different forms of communication and engaging in different forms of conflict, which is another factor in it. I feel like when we hear conflict, we automatically associate it with something negative. And I feel like we have to stop viewing conflict as a negative thing, because without conflict, we can't necessarily resolve something. We can't have a solution if there wasn't a problem. Yeah. I feel like, once again, I talked more than I ate. I'm gonna get on this eating for this last little bit of time here, because I think I've said most of the things I wanted to say, and I'd love to hear more from y'all. I think I do want to, say a little like bottom line thing, just like a conclusionary wrap up kind of dealy. You deserve better from yourself and from other people. I don't think you should ever let other people gaslight you into thinking you need to resolve things with someone toxic in order to heal and move forward. If anything, I feel like this is another tactic that has been used towards people to keep them stuck in toxic situations and relationships. And I think a lot of the people that kind of say these kind of things or do these kind of things may not even realize that they're doing it. But that doesn't make it okay. I really think we should kill the idea that forgiving an abuser or someone who has been toxic towards you is synonymous with healing. I think that there is a difference between accepting and forgiving. I think you can absolutely accept what happened to you without forgiving the other person for doing it. And I also think that you can sometimes find your healing in not forgiving that other person. Because especially when we're so entrenched in situations where we feel forced to forgive, even if it's not on our hearts, for the sake of that other person, under the guise of, but it's really for you. It's just, it feels like that extra slap in the face. Yeah, you can heal and grow while maintaining healthy boundaries for yourself, and you should. And if you find yourself as the toxic party, I hope you'll take the steps to reflect and seek professional help to ensure that you process what you've done and don't repeat those behaviors. I hope you work to determine the best way to amend for your actions through means that are centered around what that other person needs and desires for healing, and accept that no one owes you forgiveness or access to themselves or a relationship after you've harmed them. I think you should know, I think both sides of this should know that you can have meaningful, healthy relationships moving forward from these moments, but you really do have to put in the work for it too. It's true, conflict can be restorative when properly handled. There is strength in treating people as strangers, not enemies, not friends. Absolutely. Absolutely that. Because, and I say this a lot too, just because people were involved in your life at some point, and just because they're doing better now, doesn't mean they need to be involved in your life now. Sometimes them having the exact distance they have is exactly the best for both people. Or, honestly, even if it's just the best for you, you're going to have to do what's best and healthiest for you, boo-boo. Or for the sake of keeping the peace in your community, or focus on the comfortability of everyone else, not the survivor. Absolutely. Absolutely. Because we see time and time again in so many situations, I feel that, especially within the Black community, where, people are, their silence is demanded to uphold someone else's image. And I think if someone really cared about their image, A, they wouldn't do the messed up thing in the first place. B, they would own it. And like I said, amend. Work to amend. Work to actually seek forgiveness. Because that's actually another part. So many people want forgiveness and don't seek it. Don't do anything to, once again, amend for what they've done. They just expect to say, oh, I'm sorry I did the thing I did. Now forgive me. Now let us let it go back to normal. And the apology is not real. You just want to go back to your sense of comfortability. So, just know, you deserve better. Always. Family included, parents, blood, and all. Is some people that don't deserve to influence your life in any way, therefore the door. Absolutely. Abso-freaking-lutely. Some people are so bent on, pushing the whole, oh, it's your family, oh, blood, blah, 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 blah. If they don't mean good for you, let them go. Blood don't mean that they want the best for you. It really don't. Even in ancestral work, when you're working with your ancestors, you're very much so told, like, know who you're calling out to, because you have more than, just a few ancestors you're trying to reach. And just know that, on the other end of that, other people who may intend not the best things for you are there too. And you must protect yourself against it. You have to safeguard yourself against it. It's so real. I'm probably going to be wrapping up here soon. So I want to thank y'all again for tuning in. I really, really, really appreciate it. Thank you to everybody that came through. I really appreciate the lovely surprises. I learned from the last stream that I should let it go on like a little longer so it can actually catch everything that I'm saying, because of the whole latency thing. I don't know if y'all have noticed, but my response time to the things that you've been saying in the chat should be faster now, because of a setting that I changed to basically make it to where it's more real time. So I'm gonna let this ride a little bit longer. If y'all have any final thoughts that you want to put out there, or things you want to say, thank y'all again, and thank y'all again for 50 subs. I'm gonna eat a little bit more of this while I'm live, because I did not touch a lot of this, and I'm so sorry, y'all. I was just way too into the combo. But don't worry, I'm gonna eat this. It's all gonna get ate tonight. I also hope y'all have a really beautiful end to your weeks. I know we're getting really into the thick of the holiday season, and I just hope that you'll continue to stay warm and stay as happy as you can and celebrate as much as you can. I'm going to be doing more live streams. There's going to be live streams all month, every Thursday from 8:30 onward, probably usually ending around 10-ish, like this time, depending on how long the convo goes. Next week is pasteles en coquito. So tune in for that. I'm really excited about it. The following week is going to be the tell me bye so I can go. Bye, Natalie. I love you so much. Thank you for coming through. This was awesome. Oh, thank you. How was that snack wrap? Delicious. Super good. LOL. Thank you. Thank you. If you want to recreate it, it's just, a flour tortilla. I did the Purdue crispy chicken strips, some sliced onion, romaine lettuce, honey mustard, some hot honey, onion powder, garlic powder, cumin, cayenne pepper, thyme, rosemary. Yes, I think that's everything. Yeah, thank you again for stopping through, Natalie. I love you so much. Have a good night. This was awesome. Thank you, Jayla. And thank you, Abe. I appreciate your congrats. But yeah, y'all. I'm gonna finish this handful. I'm gonna drink a little bit more of my smoothie. And I'm gonna head out. The hot honey was good. The hot honey was super good on it. A great addition. I forgot to put them last time. I just put the honey mustard last time. But that hot honey, before you put it in the air fryer, because I cook mine in the air fryer, do it. Alright, y'all. Check out Instagram for the rest of the live streams that'll be happening the rest of this month. Once again, Thursdays at 8:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. And yeah, I'm gonna head out to love you, friend. Love you too, Abe. Thanks again for coming. Bye, everyone.